on the way. If anyone, doesn't want to be recorded, I'd encourage you to just allow your cameras off or whatever you feel comfortable doing. And we'll be sharing a recording to members who attended. It'll be posted to our YouTube page, but it's just for internal use and for folks who've attended this session. So just want to thank you guys all for being there. Appreciate your time as we're learning together. We've invited a few different folks here. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, I'll talk a little bit about our host, the Co-op Fund of New England. We're a nonprofit community development financial institution, and we're interested in supporting economic, social, and racial justice. And we do that through funding cooperative enterprises. We provide flexible and friendly financing. We also provide business coaching, connections to the cooperative community, and trainings like these. And we also offer investors an opportunity to invest in social impact projects, or for folks who are socially concerned, a way to put their money somewhere that can really do some good and create a different economy. So that's what we're about. We've also invited a few individuals with us. I'll allow them to kind of unmute themselves and say hey. But we've got John Santos from Urban Greens. Anything you want to share about yourself before we go in? Not full story, but just
all right. Yeah, no, we're really excited to be part of this this training, and looking forward to questions and sharing and learning and all of that. So thank you.
Excellent. Urban Greens, they just got voted the best market in Rhode Island by the readers of this magazine. And so, we've got some awesome people with us. Thanks for being here, John.
Pleasure.
We've also got Tommy from Earth Designs. They're a worker cooperative. Feel free to share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here. This is very exciting. I'm happy to share the room with everyone that's present, and to talk about what we do, how we do it.
Excellent. Appreciate you guys. I thought these were sunflowers. Tommy just schooled me. So these guys knew all about the plants. So we're going to learn a lot today, maybe a little bit more than we even anticipated. So, great group, good to have them. And then we've got Samantha. She's a very diverse background, working with the Yard and a Half, which was a landscaping worker cooperative, and also the Cambridge Cooperative Club, one of the oldest housing co-ops in the country. And so, we're lucky to have her. If you share a few words about yourself, yeah.
Thanks, Johan. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you and some familiar faces. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love this topic about how to get people like authentically engaged in the work of co-ops. So yeah, looking forward.
Excellent. And as far as today's agenda, really straightforward. We've got an hour and a half until 1:30. And so we're going to spend that first half an hour just getting to know our panelists a little bit, hearing their stories. And then for the second half an hour or so, we're going to ask some planned questions that are sourced from the registration forms, from things that I know we're all eager to hear about. And finally, we're going to spend the last half an hour or so engaging some emergent questions, some questions that come out of the chat. As you're hearing the conversation, feel free to drop a comment in the chat or a question in the chat as a follow-up. And we'll source those and probably ask a few of those. And we'll also give folks an opportunity to ask direct questions if they get on a question stack by just dropping stack in the chat if they have something that hasn't been asked at the end. So those are basic agenda items, and our objectives, of course, right in the title, exploring best practices in membership recruitment, in membership engagement, and membership retention. We're hoping that just through this peer community dialogue that we're going to learn a lot about what we can do differently, or we can do better, or what we cannot do. That's another important piece. So, just appreciate everyone's time, and I'm excited to learn together. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask that everyone who's not speaking, that they mute themselves. And also, if you go to the top right of your screen and you see view, click on speaker view. And if you've not already done so, you'll see the four of us in the center of the screen. And that way you can just watch us. And then at the end, we'll all be able to engage each other. Okay. All right. So if anyone has any trouble, drop it in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to give our speakers a chance to tell their story, starting with you, Tommy. Would you mind telling us a bit about your story? Tell us about your journey into co-op membership and your current role as it pertains to now.
Thank you. I came to Earth Science almost by chance, if you will. I had been in the restaurant business for years before, and I was actually working right in the restaurant that I was working at was shared a backyard with Aja's house. So she was a regular. Aja's the founder of our cooperative. So she was a regular at the restaurant, and we just befriended each other. As some of you may know, the restaurant business can be a highly hierarchical structure with all of sort of the attendant pitfalls of vertical structures like disengagement, disenfranchisement, burnout, low retention rates. It's a product of the highly compartmentalized nature of running a kitchen. So I had a pervasive sort of feeling of not owning my labor and not being in charge of my own destiny. So Aja had been poking and prodding me for a while. Come work for me, come work for me. And really what sealed the deal was when she mentioned that she was transitioning her company into a worker-owned cooperative, which I've had some experience in living in an intentional community with horizontal structures and cooperation. And that really sort of piqued my interest. Although I have always felt like a really deep connection to nature, I was an environmental major in college. I felt like I didn't have the skills I didn't know if I could garden. So it was sort of a leap of faith that was more guided by my interest in owning my labor. I could not ignore her calls any longer. So I came and worked, started working at Earth Science, and was, I'm happy that my suspicions were confirmed that this was a business where, horizontality was strived for. And that explicitly stated that you could own your own labor and you could play an active role in shaping the trajectory of not only your career, but also of the business. And then I found out that the actual work that I was doing was awesome, and I enjoyed it very much. So one thing led to another, and I pretty much applied to join the cooperative as soon as I became eligible, and have not looked back since.
Excellent, excellent. I appreciate you sharing a little bit about yourself there. Can you tell us about your current role and how that has transitioned from that point of being poked and prodded into the land and into your current role?
So my current role is assistant operations manager. I arrived at it organically, but as a result of shifts in our company that we had sort of a major shakeup with Aja. When she formed the cooperative, she had a plan to actually hand it off to the cooperators, the members of the cooperative. So when that happened, that created some shifts in positions around. So all of a sudden there was a seat that I can have at the at the table, at the management table, and here I am. I said yes. And it's very rewarding work. I'm very happy to be holding what I'm holding at the moment.
Excellent, excellent. Appreciate your journey. I'm going to give Samantha a chance to tell her story a little bit. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey into co-op membership?
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say it's interesting, Tommy, to hear you talk about the contrast with the restaurant work, because I also worked in restaurants, waiting tables for several years before working in co-ops, and maybe that was part of what kind of brought me there, that stark contrast. Yeah, but my co-op journey started about 9 years ago when I moved into the Cambridge Co-op Club. Oh, I have some pictures. Lane, could you share that first slide for me? Thank you. Yeah, so those are just some, yeah, nice drawings somebody did of us and a collage someone put together. There's the house itself. Yeah, so Cambridge Co-op Club, it's an 11-person intergenerational housing cooperative. We had people ages 20 to 90. We shared chores, had weekly house dinners, annual retreats, a lot of meetings, to try to come to consensus on like things that were important to us and that we needed to figure out living together. And just some background on the co-op, basically all the way back in 1943 during World War II, there was a group of men and women in Cambridge that moved in together to share their electricity rations from the war. And that was kind of controversial, having unrelated men and women living together. But they persisted. They moved a few times, gained and lost members, and then 20 years later in 1963 bought this house together that you can see in the drawing. And the Cambridge Co-op Club was founded and put in the name of a trust. So we're an independent co-op. It's pretty much the resident members who run the house and steward the resources of the house. And yeah, we have some trustees. I'm probably going to become a trustee. I'm like an advisory board member right now, even though I don't live there anymore. But yeah, I would say typically prior to the pandemic, our turnover was about maybe 2 people a year out of 11, which I think is relatively low for housing co-ops like ours, with everybody in one house. And I think, part of that is the intergenerational aspect. It wasn't just folks in their 20s, it was people of all ages, some people looking for more stability. And that was really helpful for us in terms of like institutional memory, among other things, having people who stayed 5, 10, 15 years. I was there for 7 years, I think. And the picture on the top right is from our annual retreats. And I just wanted to mention, I can talk about it more later, but that I think these were times when we had some of the most meaningful and also the most equitable participation. And I wish that we would have done more of them. So yeah, I'll talk more about that later. But yeah, the Cambridge Co-op Club is a member of NASCO, which is the National Association primarily of housing co-ops, primarily student housing co-ops. But that's how I found out about a yard and a half. You can change to the next slide, Lane. Thank you. Because NASCO was organizing the summer co-op internship and I was working in restaurants, like I needed to do something different. So this seemed like a cool opportunity to do member education. And yeah, so I started a yard and a half. A yard and a half is based outside of Boston in Waltham. It's a primarily immigrant-owned cooperative. When I was there, we had about 30 people, staff, members. That includes members and non-members. And Yard and a Half is a co-op conversion. So it was started by a woman named Eileen Michaels, who grew the business for about 25 years and then sold it to the workers upon retirement. And I worked after my internship, then I started there full time. I was working as the membership coordinator, kind of the liaison between people who worked in the office doing like sales and operational stuff, and then people who worked in the field, like laying sod and building fancy stone patios. So yeah, part of my role was to help guide people into membership, orient them to the co-op, supporting the different committees that we had, supporting the board and people who were new to those roles, kind of learning together, like, what does a board do? How do we do this well? How do we actually follow the direction of the membership? And help people feel comfortable and encouraged to participate. Yeah, and I also connected folks to sort of the broader co-op community, which I think is really important, which I could speak to more later. But I'll just say, while I was there, we had a few I was there for about 3 years, or maybe more, something like that. And then after I was there for a couple of years, and I was eligible, I bought into the co-op and became a member myself. So while I was there, we had like a few cohorts of members, of employees become members. So the board grew to 17 people, which was not super functional. I mean, I don't know. But basically the members voted to reduce the size of the board and make it a representative board. But originally it was all the members were on the board because there weren't a ton of members in the beginning. And while I was there, the membership also voted to make it easier to become a member, make membership more accessible to people. So they cut the buy-in fee in half. It was higher in the beginning when they first bought the business because they needed the money. But then when they didn't need it as much, we're able to cut that in half. So then a bunch more people joined, and they also reduced the amount of time you needed to be at a yard and a half to become a member. So before it was like 3 years, and they changed it to, I think, 2 full seasons. So yeah, I could talk more about that. But and the other thing they did, which I think was really important, is they added a member education requirement. And I'd be happy to talk more about that later, but that was like really made a difference when we actually invested like a lot more time in that. So I don't want to talk too long. I also spent a year working at the ICA group, working with home care co-ops. I could talk more about that. But yeah, these days I'm working as a community organizer for a Somerville anti-poverty agency outside of Boston, and serving as an advisory member to the housing co-op.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate rich story. So much content that we get to dig into. I mean, so I just appreciate you. All right, thank you. So now I'm going to give John the same opportunity. If you can tell us a bit about your story and your journey into co-op membership.
Sure. So my journey actually begins on the other side of the world on Guam. And so that's where I was born. And then coming here to the States when I was very young, my first job was working in a supermarket, and I was the cleanup kid. So I was the guy that went to clean up the meat department and the dairy department, and I was the only non-union job in the store. It's called the porter. But what that did was it gave me the opportunity to see the different jobs that were going on. And I was on the fence about going to college, but then I ended up becoming a meat cutter, going down that path, because I really liked the physical nature of the work and the way that group worked together. I spent some time in California and had a chance to really learn the trade in a service environment. And so I ended up getting married, traveling back to the East Coast and getting a job in another family market, and then kind of just growing in that role as a meat manager. And then signing on with a company in Providence, Rhode Island, called Bread and Circus. So folks that are from the New England area will know that name. It goes back into the 1990s. Whole Foods purchased Bread and Circus, and then I was with Whole Foods as a general manager for a while. Actually started out as a meat manager, meat team leader, ended up as a store team leader for them for a number of years, working all over New England and traveling the world on food, Italy, France, Germany, all over. And it was an amazing journey. And having that experience, I felt really tooled for whatever could come my way with regards to food. I had a couple of opportunities to work in the wholesale side as a meat buyer, center of the plate buyer for Reinhardt, owned a couple of restaurants, and worked as a general manager for an advertising agency that serviced the supermarket industry. So I felt really, really well suited for this job. And when Urban Greens opened up, or was in the process of opening up, and it was down to a couple of us, and I didn't get the job at Urban Greens. I had a job in Boston working for a large ethnic market. So working in that particular market, I was able to, most of my customers, 50% of my customers were Latino and 50% were African. And so this was an environment that I had not really been exposed to. And so again, going into a supermarket environment with the experience I had, I thought I knew everything, right? And then finding out this customer base has a whole different expectation of the product mix and such. When Urban Greens was actually ready to open, 3 years after I had initially interviewed, they were looking for a new general manager. So they knocked on my door, and now I was actually really prepared for this urban co-op. Most co-ops are not positioned like ours is. Most co-ops are in more in the suburbs, have a different customer base mix than what we have. We are located right in an urban environment, servicing a very diverse customer base, and with actually a core group of owners that go back to 2002. Now, mind you, Urban Greens actually opened in 2019. So they had been planning to open in 2016. So this opening a food co-op is a process. There's a lot of logistical issues that have to be worked through, and it goes way slower than you anticipate. So once we opened, we had the core group of owners that were essentially coming from, these were co-op people. These were buying group people, buying club people. And so many of them were white, very few people of color, but very committed to creating a sense of equity throughout the community. So my job was, how do I create an environment that invites everybody to our store? Now, mind you, we're called Urban Greens. And so everybody thought we were a pot dispensary when we first opened up. So we jumped that hurdle. I actually drew some people, but disappointed people at some point. But we still were not getting people of color to come into the store because we did not look like anything that they were familiar with. The product mix, because of the way the store opened, was problematic. We were selling platanos for $1 a piece. And, like, who's going to buy a plantain for $1? It's 3 for $1 or 4 for $1. If you want, we didn't even have yuca or cassava. We didn't have any of that. So fortunately, again, having just come from one of the largest ethnic supermarkets in Boston, Tropical Foods, I was able to bring these products in and try to create a welcoming environment for folks, which really didn't work. What it did was it still created more loss for us because we were not resonating with the community. We didn't, even though our hiring practices we were very committed to trying to reflect the community that we serve, that we were trying to service. The customer base around us still didn't really trust us. They got what they got from the bodegas and the other markets that were in the area. Transportation is always a challenge for some families to try to get someplace. You're lugging groceries. You don't want to be going to a bunch of different places or someplace that may not have what you want. So we really had to reinvent how we were going to communicate with and invite these folks in. Knowing that we had to change our product mix was part of it. But how do we communicate to these folks? How do we get there? So we did some door hangers and things like that. And we started to target certain radio stations and design our ads a little bit differently on there. But what really saved us and really propelled us forward was COVID. What happened in COVID was the city of, mind you, we're a single operator. And so we don't have a warehouse that we have to draw from. So we've always had to kind of fish for our, go fishing for our food, really. We have our main suppliers, UNFI and Associated Grocers, but we were also, cued into like, where else can we get stuff? So, and having a restaurant background, you know how to forage. And so we did that, so we were never out of toilet paper, yeast, sanitizer, paper towels, any of that. We always had that. And that raised the eyebrow of the city of Providence, because they were trying to find people that could fulfill. Money was coming into the city, into a bunch of organizations to support communities where people were food insecure, but there wasn't anyone that had food or had goods. And so because of how we were able to pivot, and the work we were able to do with pickup trucks and running around, they reached out to us and said, look, can you prepare these bags of food for us that we would pick up every week? We'd have the recreation centers drive their vans to you, and they would pick up these totes. Can you logistically pull that off? And we said, yeah, we can do it. And we fed 22,000 people during the summer, which was amazing. And then that led to, and now these are people that are food insecure. These are people in the communities that we were trying to target with our community room, which would have been 2 meetings a month, would have taken forever. In 1 week's food distribution, we were able to reach more people than we would have in a year. And we did that, we sustained that through. And that opened up more doors for us with the YMCA, and then we were able to target some other groups, but I'll explain more of that as we go on. But that's a little bit about my story. The co-op is a completely different structure of business than where I spent most of my life, but it's in line with my principles and the way that I manage. So it's I'm pretty happy here. Thank you.
No, thank you, man. Great story. Really appreciate that. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to talk about that piece actually of recruitment. What were some of the goals and criteria you had going into your initial recruitment efforts, especially as you came in and things were changing? And I'll let John start, and then anyone can react to that.
Sure. So recruitment for us, when we opened our doors June 27th, 2019, we had 1,200 members, and about 600 of those had joined just prior because of the marketing campaign to get the store rolling. Right now we have 3,025 members. So we've been able to really grow our membership, and it really, it took us a little bit of time once we opened and lost the bloom of the opening, lost all of the excitement around that. The new membership kind of dropped, and we weren't getting the kind of membership that we were looking for. We have 2 types of membership. We have our standard membership, where if you are financially secure, it's going to cost you $160. You take 4 years to pay it off. If you are leaving the area, you can get your money back or deed your membership to someone else. But if you're economically challenged and you're on any kind of subsidy, we have a food for all program. So instead of 160, you're going to pay 80. And instead of paying it off in 4 years, you can pay it off in 8 years. So $10 a year. So we try to make it as affordable as possible. We also experimented with ways to create member perks. Now, member perks are kind of the reason, not really the reason, but it's the sweet little bit of sugar in the, on a monthly basis that you get that keeps you, like, that's a really cool benefit, right? So we've tried targeting specific items and discounting those items. If you're a member, you pay X while a non-member pays Y. And that was okay. Say that again. Oh.
Yeah, I think that was an accident. Keep going.
Okay, sure. So the Food for All program gives you 10% off of all of your purchases all the time. So we really try to lower the barrier, any financial barrier for somebody in the community to come in and get us. So, and then we buy very aggressively, and we sell certain items like plantains, like yucca, like fufu and gari, and these kinds of things that appeal to a very specific customer base. And it's for those customers that haven't eaten those foods all their lives, they find those foods also interesting, and it enriches their mix of products. So really, food is our business, and that's really the one lever that we try to use to draw new customers in. And then meeting with people of influence and leveraging their organizations is really critical. When we do, we created some fundraising opportunities. We have a fish and chip night every Friday night. And so you get a chance to buy your amazing, we serve the fish and chip in a pizza box, right? It's a massive piece of fish with fries and all good stuff. And it's $10.99. So it's a super value, right? And you're going to feel like maybe I've got a couple dollars that I can contribute to the Calvary Baptist Church fund drive or the African Alliance. And so we create in the platform where you order online, the opportunity to make a donation. We also, and so that involves their organizational structure to promote us. We try to leverage that as much as possible. We found for us as a food retailer, and I know a lot of the folks on the panel are not so much in retail as they are in service, but when you're selling a good, you're controlling products that people want, you're drawing people to you. Our average customer count on a weekly basis is between 3,500 and 4,000 people. We're open 7 days a week. So we have a lot of interaction and a lot of people passing through. So we try to find out who are the people that influence the community, and you'll identify them. Once you can partner with those folks and either create an opportunity for them, like we have a building, so they can come here and set up a table and talk about what they do. We have a craft fair that we invite people from the community, a craft day where they can come set up their tables. And so this is how we integrate into the community that's around us. And this is how we leverage our relationships, and we understand what we do well. We put food into bags well. So that's our business, right? And so organizations that are trying to, like various churches around the area that are trying to manage these food drives, there is money around for that. What they lack is the ability to source the food and the team to put it together and distribute it. But that's what we do as a supermarket. So we look at our core competencies and we try to partner them with these other people in the field that have access to people that we want to get to know and that we want to get to know us. And that's kind of our story. And that very simple thought, that train of thought, that'll thread through pretty much all of our interactions, our marketing, the way we display goods. It's all about trying to make those connections.
Excellent. No, I appreciate that. Really powerful pieces. I know what I'm getting is leveraging your core strengths. If you're dealing with food, use food to pull people in, you know what I mean? That into everything. I'm hearing about partnerships, how you create win-win relationships with influential partners in terms of institutions in the community who are friendly to the communities you're interested in getting in your doors. And then accessibility, allowing that price to shift according to who is interested in being a part of the crew. So that's pretty cool. I want to pass it over to Tommy to talk a little bit more about how they've engaged it, because I know you guys just welcomed 2 new members, right? So tell me a bit about the value proposition or the benefits that these members expect to get as they come aboard, and kind of how you engage them.
Thank you. And thank you, John. Well, as far as like recruitment overall, so we're a gardening company. So that we happen to live in a somewhat agricultural area, to be located in a somewhat agricultural area. So when you apply for Earth Science, you're kind of already either interested in that kind of work or coming from some adjacent experience to gardening or something like that. So that gives us a little bit of a head up as far as like initial engagement and recruitment of employees. As far as like recruitment of owners, I think our biggest emphasis is on company culture and on creating a thriving and generative and nurturing culture for our workers to engage in joyful work. And so our criteria for membership really can be boiled down to, do you understand our culture? Are you active in it? Do you have a generative role in it? Do you feel happy within it. And so by the time that we get to that, some of our prospective owners get to the point of joining the cooperative, they already have sort of like embodied and become absorbed into the culture that we're trying to create. So that gives us a little bit of a leg up. I think we're very lucky to have people joining the cooperative that have actually been part of the business or as employees for a long time. Our initial period is a year. You have to be working for us a year, and in that time, it becomes readily obvious, whether this is a culture that you enjoy and that you want to contribute to. So and some of our prospective owners have actually waited 2 or 3 years to join, which I think some people may find that like, oh, maybe you want to you're lacking in some incentives or anything like that. But I can appreciate the fact that when someone takes that long to find their place and to sort of envision what their place is going to be as an owner, that they took their time, and that by the time that we sit at the board table to vote them in, that we would know very well whether this is going to be a fruitful union or not. As far as how our new co-op members benefit, I think everything is circled around culture, and it's not like our new owners really benefit that differently from someone that is just an employee. Because we're a company that, like I said, stresses culture a lot. So we engage everyone on an equal playing field, whether you're interested in becoming part of the cooperative, or whether you are just happy to not be part of the cooperative and just be a gardener. We try to have sort of a uniform engagement of doing things to enrich our company culture. Camping trips, ice cream socials. We have a morning circle every morning, frequent staff meetings. And I think has served us really well in creating a healthy pool of prospective members. And as far as how they benefit from actually being an owner or a member of the cooperative, the differences are actually kind of very slight, because there is a financial reward, obviously, but basically just having a more behind the scenes sort of understanding of already knowing our mission and our culture. You get to peek behind the curtain at the more interesting and sort of involved minutia of actually running the business. And I feel it was really exciting for me when I joined the cooperative, and I sense that excitement is a common thing for people that are newly admitted to the cooperative. It's like, oh yeah, I've benefited from all of this, that was built, but now I get to peek and see how it's actually put together, and I can know where I can direct my energy and my spirit to what fulfills me the most. Yeah.
That was awesome, man. It's so rich and so distinct in its approach from the needs of a food co-op, because you guys are working there and you spoke to the strength of taking your time, to find your place. I think that's really powerful. I mean, different needs, different co-ops. And I think that's just really worth repeating, that it's okay for folks to take their time to find their place, that you guys stress culture so that everyone's kind of treated similarly, because it's about the culture, whether you're a member or a worker. And just that idea of the non-hierarchy makes sense, seeing how you were brought into it, that, you'd be interested in perpetuating that. That's really powerful, I think. So just appreciate you. And I'm going to give Samantha a chance to talk about maybe how goals and criteria change over time, you know, because maybe you've been a part of so many different things. And anyone can respond to this. This will be the final one. Have you ever voted no? So you can you can kind of dive into that piece. Just voting no on a member. So thinking about how goals and criteria for membership change over time. And then that'll be the final one that everybody will get a chance to respond to if they'd like. So I invite you to the stage, Samantha.
Okay, so you said, so, okay. Have I ever voted no on a member? And
Yeah.
like, how does that speak to how membership criteria and stuff has changed?
Yeah, the first part, definitely. I mean, the goals and criteria, how do they change over time? How have you seen them change over time for the organizations that you've been a part of? You know, as the needs
Sure.
change?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Well, I guess first thing that comes to mind is like with a yard and a half, the worker cooperative. And I was talking about how the criteria for membership, you know, we reduce the buy-in fee, reduce the amount of time you had to work there to become a member, but we added the member education piece. And so how that happened was, you know, the first year that I was there was like a small cohort of employees who were interested in becoming members and buying into the co-op. So, you know, we put together an hour or so long orientation or introduction to the co-op before folks joined, as in English and Spanish. It was fine. Like people had questions, you know, and then they became members. But, you know, the following year, when we had another cohort of employees who were eligible for membership and interested, we decided to do a little differently. You know, we kind of saw that after bringing that first cohort on, it just seemed like we needed to do a lot more member education from the get-go. It's like, you think you've communicated all the things about the co-op, and then it's like, oh, wait, this stuff is completely new for everybody. And like, you have to like do it a lot and in different ways. And it's easy to like take for granted some of that background knowledge if you're already coming in with it, if you've already like been part of participating, you know, in groups and it happens a certain way. That's, you know, there's like cultural differences around that also. So, and just to, you know, make sure that people had more realistic expectations of what it means to be a member of the co-op and what it doesn't mean to be a member of the co-op. You know, what are the goals, like generally speaking, of the co-op? What are the challenges that stand in our way? Yeah, it was clear, like, you know, after some folks who hadn't gotten that more in-depth, like member education engagement, like, that things just took longer and were harder, I would say, like at the board level. So say the second time around, what we did was put together this like 6-session series or course, like a co-op 101. And, you know, this was something that the members had voted to add, and like as a requirement. And so I think it was also just a way to like help people feel more welcome into the co-op, spend that time with people and like give space for people to like ask all the questions and share their relevant experience, you know. And coming out of that, people were like, oh, actually like feel a part of this thing. And yeah, so we basically, I said like, you know, even if you're a little bit interested or you're curious, but you don't know, you don't have to commit, just come to these. But like, if you do want to be it, you have to have completed them. So we had these at 6 a.m. during the week because people started working at 7 a.m. And that was just better for people. And we had coffee and, you know, I think language justice is an important piece. Like I'm not fluent in Spanish. Like I got very good at communicating in Spanish, and doing trainings while I was there, but it's a bilingual company. So like there's a few people who only speak English and there's definitely like a few people who only speak Spanish, and then there's a bunch of people who are bilingual. So it's just critical, like, to building trust, that like you don't take for granted, if somebody's just being quiet, that it's because they have nothing to say, so anyway, I could say a lot more about this, but the member series, it was about 6 weeks. We had topics on the history of the company, the broader co-op history, democratic governance 101, because like democratic decision making is not something most of us learn in school or in other workplaces, right? Co-op finance 101, member rights and responsibilities. And we also had folks sit in on a board meeting and then come back and we debrief together, what was that like? What questions did you have? And yeah, it just seemed like things went better that time around. Like I said, people felt more a part of it, came in with more realistic expectations, and just generally like more trust and goodwill towards the cooperative and like the folks who were currently kind of in leadership at the cooperative. And yeah, I think that was really worth it. And I definitely recommend putting time into member education and like requiring it, at least from my experience. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, very interesting. I think this is where the engagement piece comes in. How do you engage a recruit, and then along the line, keep engaging members. So that's pretty interesting. We heard about the open, accessible perspective of a food co-op, trying to get folks in. We heard about the fit perspective of a worker co-op, trying to take your time to really nourish the roots that you're trying to establish in the company before sprouting out and really taking form. So, and now we hear about the kind of education piece along the way and learning and having the needs of recruitment change as folks we come on board. So I would love to keep going with that. But before we do, I want to give folks a chance to respond to that. Have you ever voted no? Who, are the relevant outsiders, or what are the boundaries that needed to be set up before we go on to more of that onboarding piece? Give you guys 30 seconds if you needed to, if there's anybody.
We have not. Or as long as I've been an owner, we have not ever voted a no. Every membership has been pretty much unanimous. But that'd be an interesting scenario for sure. Yeah, and I feel that speaks a lot to what I said before, like people taking their time to like really find a sense of belonging, and by the time they're ready, we know each other very well, so that has worked. That has worked for us. It so happens that usually during the employee stage, before you even start considering being an owner, there are, like I said before, we place a pretty big emphasis, really big emphasis on culture. So if you made it to a point where you're interested in ownership, that means you're probably going to get a unanimous vote. If you're not a good fit, you probably will never get even close to it, to that stage. We have had an owner that was let go. That's a different scenario, but that was emerging situations after he was accepted into the co-op, after they were accepted into the co-op. But I also want to say that I really appreciate what Samantha just said about education. I think that's a really important piece to recruitment and retention. In our cooperative, we definitely stress, like engaging on a sort of didactic level, how our company works, how the cooperatives work in general. Like you get to, like we have intro to co-op workshops every year, and as well as financial literacy classes, et cetera, different opportunities for people, for everyone, for employees and current worker owners to like learn or deepen their knowledge on, on that.
Definitely. Yeah, appreciate that. John?
So we have on occasion asked people to leave the store, but we have never had a situation where we would turn somebody away from ownership. As a consumer-owned co-op, we try to invite as many folks in as we can. What we see that gets some people excited about joining is when they see what we're involved in the community. And then they understand that they're not looking at this ownership position so much for a return on investment from a monetary perspective, but more wanting to associate themselves and align themselves with an organization that shares the core principles. So, but no, we haven't asked anyone, we haven't denied anybody an ownership position.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Sam?
Yeah, so I mean, at the housing co-op, we've definitely said no to people because a lot of people want to live there. And so we only have space for so many, and it's not for everyone. There's like a lot involved. So we have an application, a phone call, and then a group interview. And because, with the housing co-op, it's like, in our case, like when you live there, you are automatically a member. And so we had kind of a practice of like, we really wanted all of the current members to feel like really good about the person before we brought them in. And when times that we didn't do that, and we were like, well, the majority really like them, maybe your concern isn't so valid or something, like sometimes that didn't go so well. So, and then in terms of a yard and a half at the worker co-op, I was just thinking there was one employee in the office who tried to kind of get in early, like he hadn't worked there for 2 full seasons, but he was really engaged and really smart and stuff, and he wanted to be an exception. The board said no, like, we don't really know you enough yet. And it was a good thing they did that actually in this case, because he ended up leaving and he wasn't holding up his end of the bargain. So for us, it was good to have that time to like really get to know somebody.
Gotcha. All right, let's keep going. I see some good comments in the chat. Let's dive deeper on that onboarding piece. We've got folks who are coming into a co-op brand new to the co-op world, brand new to ownership, brand new to working with other people in a leadership capacity or whatever. And so how are you guys engaging that onboarding process? Can you talk a bit about some successes and failures as it pertains to helping folks make that transition? And anyone can go first. Who's ready? Seems like Tommy's ready.
We're specifically talking about onboarding a new owner. So many of our structures and systems are currently like settling down after a period of like revolution. So we strive for a more perfect system of onboarding new owners, but I cannot say it's not that. So our previous system was, which was new in and of itself, it was a system that was implemented last year, was that every cohort would get, basically like a buddy. It's a buddy system situation where a existing member will like sponsor a new member and sort of like get them familiarized with what it means to be an owner, what it means to peek behind the curtain and have added responsibility, time commitments, time management, et cetera, et cetera. And we found that was useful, but not perfect. And that is just a feeling that it can be better. So now we're in the process of rethinking this. It just so happens that the 2 new members that we voted in recently were folks that were already in positions of leadership, and one of them was our assistant maintenance manager already, and one of them is our primary install crew leader. So they had already sort of had a little bit of a taste of management and how the in like intra dynamics of our company work. So, you know, they definitely benefited for that and needed a little bit less of a, you know, of like someone to watch over them, if you will. But we strive to be, you know, to like be adaptable to every situation, and that is not always going to be the case. Like we want to, like, our philosophy is like, you can be an owner and just be a gardener. You can be an owner and be a manager. You can be an owner and you know, be the facilities person. With like, we don't, like, ownership doesn't come with like a specific attached sort of like hierarchical like power up, if you will. So with that in mind, we want to have an onboarding system that is more inclusive, and more adaptable to different situations and where people are coming from. It just so happens that we've been lucky that the people who have been interested in ownership thus far have been people that have, you know, through their natural talents and whatever, have worked themselves into positions of leadership within the company. But we don't want that to always be the case. It's not, you know, it's not a requirement or something that is even desired. So yeah, it's in flux right now. Our old system, like I said, was a buddy system, and it had its, you know, it worked, but it wasn't all encompassing. It wasn't like as adaptable as we would like it to be. But I hope that makes sense.
Definitely, definitely. And I think that's really interesting. It's like, who's responsible for bringing folks on board, right? You can have a buddy, you know, and that person doesn't know everything, and they might have their own particular perspectives of the company. And so, you know, you're passing on whatever code that person's been programmed with. So I completely understand that. So I want to pass it to Sam to talk about the value of having someone responsible for that, and, you know, some of the costs pertaining to that, and how do you deal with that?
Ooh, yeah, well, I mean, I guess I was just thinking that, you know, when you get a new job, like outside of a co-op situation, if it's a place, a good place, they have some sort of onboarding plan for you, or like are thinking about you. But I think I've been in a lot of situations where I get a job and it's like, have fun, good luck, figure it out, you know? And some people like that, but that's, you know, it's helpful to have onboarding. And so I feel like in co-ops, it's even easier to just like let that fall through the cracks amidst like your day-to-day work. I feel like my main advice is do something for onboarding. Like, don't let it just fall through the cracks. And I mean, let's see, buddy system, like we've done things like that. And it's also just so critical for building trust, which I think is like the key to like co-ops functioning well in general. And you know, like giving, like at our housing co-op, we had this like big manual that like has all the policies and practices and history of the co-op, and it's like, don't just give someone a manual and expect that to be their onboarding. I don't think that has worked well, at least for us. But I mean, I think what you're asking, Johan, is like a really good question. You know, who's responsible for that? I mean, I think it really depends on the situation, but it's true. Like, we definitely were trying to be thoughtful about, okay, so like, you know, who's going to be a buddy, who offers to be a buddy, and then like, what do we know about their current like relationship to the house and participation in the house and take on things. And I don't know. I don't really have a solid good answer for this, but it's really hard, but please do something. That's what I would say.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think you point to it, and we spoke about this before, just that trust piece, you know. If you don't have the capacity to assign someone that role, either a buddy or, you know, actually have the funding to say, this is your job, you know, membership, just how do you build trust ongoingly? How do you not outsource the onboarding experience to a document that's static, you know, and thinking about just allowing a mechanism for trust, no matter what you have at your disposal to onboard a member. So to me, I think that's helpful. I hope that's helpful to folks. John, let's talk about, the fact that you have such a wide membership, and, it's kind of maybe a low touch membership to some extent. Maybe some members are high touch, but thinking about that balance of low member engagement or member engagement in general versus like member fatigue, what decisions do members get to participating and to keep them involved in the organization?
Well, we communicate with them fairly regularly on Facebook, Instagram, email blasts, and then just through info@Urban Greens, things like that. So they're up to speed on all of the different things that we're doing. Some members have found it, really enjoyable to participate in the food drives and the different community things that speaks to them. Other members, they just like to see what we're doing. So by having a team that is good at communicating the activities of the co-op, the products that we're bringing in, that we see a lot of comments come in from members, and we celebrate the members when they come in. If a person comes in with they're a 3-digit, we call them, we get excited because we have over 3,000 members. So if somebody is under 999, that's an exciting thing for us. They've been with us for a long time. So, and then in our world, engaging with the members by getting to know their names and things like that helps. And where you're seeing people coming in on a weekly basis or multiple times in the week, you get to know them. And that personal touch is, it's a way that customers and members can connect with us. And then again, it's food. So I'm not sure how frequently the members of some of the other co-ops, if you're living in a co-op, then you're there every day. But for us, we see our members fairly regularly, and we draw from the immediate neighborhood. So those are our primary ways of trying to stay engaged with the members. The activities that they get to do, we have an annual meeting where they get to vote on board positions, and where, when you go into a supermarket, you can talk to the grocery clerk and explain the item that you've been looking for, and they can tell you, okay, it'll be here next week. And so that positive outcome, when that customer comes back next week, continues to reinforce that we're here to serve them, and there's a value. So that affects both members and non-members. But those are some of the ways that we engage members and stay relevant and visible. And we didn't look for this particular award that we received. It wasn't even on our radar. But to see that the community reached out and voted us best local market in Rhode Island was just so exciting. And again, by being active, people can connect with that. Whether, like you said, it's a low touch or low level involvement, they're still identifying and associating themselves with this organization. And I think that is meaningful to folks also. So those, I think, are some of the ways that we engage. And also the different form of memberships that we have. The Food for All program is one where, now that we have built up a level of trust because we've increased our exposure to the customers that we have targeted, why the co-op is here in a food desert, we're trying to target a specific group and provide nutritional support. Now that that's kind of those seeds are sprouting, if you will, they're speaking to each other. And that word of mouth is one of the most effective ways to build. The other thing I want to mention is that when we advertise, if you listen to most commercials on Latino radio, it's really blaring. There's a lot of like, we're here to sell you this. And it's like, it's like a car commercial. We took a completely different perspective. We made it very conversational. We made it the granddaughter speaking to her abuela and telling the abuela that, look, there's this really new market. And then the abuela saying, oh, we had a cooperativo. I know what that is, And then we had a nephew speaking to an uncle. And the nephew was talking about COVID and how nervous he is. And the uncle's like, back in our country, we had a lot of scary things too. And we pulled together as a community. So rather than marketing a product we marketed a relationship, a way of looking at each other. And again, that's what helped solidifies. There are better markets in Providence, Rhode Island that have more goods than we have, that have more people working and give you all kinds of stuff. But there aren't many that care as much about the customer and try to connect with them than we do. And I think that's why we won this award. It wasn't because we have a great building with amazing parking and lots of stuff. It's because people could connect with what we were doing. And I think that's the secret to growing your organization as a co-op.
Excellent, excellent. Lots of good nuggets in there. Lots of good nuggets. Yeah, it's made me think of the other side, whether it's oversharing information when we're trying to build charts, or whether there's a sense of member fatigue because we're trying to bring people in, or there's a sense of alienating old members because we're trying to recruit and grow. Can you guys speak to any of those if anything seems relevant to you? Go ahead, Sam.
I got one for this. Thanks for the question. So yeah, I'm thinking about the housing co-op. And I think I mentioned that we had every year we would do a weekend retreat where we would all leave the house, go rent a house somewhere like in nature, enjoy, spend some time together. And it was mandatory. If you want to join the co-op, you have to commit to going away with us for a weekend. And yeah, these to me were the times when we had some of the most meaningful and also the most equitable participation. And I really wish that we would have done them more, like more than once a year, honestly. And then, yeah, some years we didn't do it because we didn't have the capacity. It's like volunteer run organization. But speaking to specifically the question, I think like a lot of co-ops have that, like you've got some new folks and you've got some folks who've been there a while, and I just think it's so important to like regularly take time out of your day to day, like schedule it, plan it, and get on the same page in terms of like we often did at the retreats, like collective visioning or value setting, like what are our shared values as this organization with this new group of people, like without trying to still hold on to the pieces that have carried us through all these decades. What is our shared purpose? So I had some notes on this. I just want to make sure I hit on everything. Like, yeah, what do you hope for? So I just felt like when we had those conversations, that was really energizing for people and connected us to the bigger picture and strengthened our relationships. And that is something I think you should do.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I think what's being highlighted and a particular strength of a co-op is the sense of community that can be created. And, as John was talking about, highlighting those trusted relationships, using those examples of the abuela and the grandchild or the nephew and the uncle, just highlighting these things, whether it's an event that is primarily for relaxation together, just creating that sense of community. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think even, we do that, the heart will wander. So what makes a member stay? Even, as we try to do these things, so yeah, Tommy or anybody?
Yeah, I think Samantha touched on a very important point, and that is like establishing shared values and keeping a good a trajectory towards the fulfilling those values or embodying those values. I think that's very, very important. If I would even dare say that is probably one of the main ingredients of member retention, is making that clear, making sure values clear, and And then the rest is just engaging people in things that support that. And it's funny that Samantha mentioned that one of the times that she can remember being most engaged was during that weekend trip. We actually took a trip to a company trip with all of the owners at the time, after a particularly arduous season. We took time and just disappeared into a desert in California, all of us, and really we all came back like the tighter and the better for it. We're also somewhat lucky that we're not so large yet that this has become a real issue. All of the current members, we are also friends socially, and so that helps. But definitely establishing shared values and keeping an eye on the price of upholding that and embodying that, I think, are very important things.
Definitely. I'll, if anyone wants to respond to that, go ahead. I'll ask our final question before we dive into some chat questions. Is there any? Okay. So the final question is, just directly building off that, just the sustainability of our community. And, it's about growing thoughtfully. How can we allow our membership activities to keep its footing? And as the co-op blooms and becomes more attractive to all types of different species, how do we remain thoughtful as that happens? So how do we keep our footing as we continue to bloom? John, you want to get in there? Even though we got a lot of nods from the other guys.
So how do we keep our footing? I think for us as a food co-op, we have to be relevant. We have to buy as much local as we can get. We have to understand what the current expectations of our membership base is based on why they signed up, what we sold them, what we told them we were. And then we have to just really continue to redefine ourselves, but move as close to achieving the best that we can do in those areas. I know for us, it's trying to continually support the purchase of local products, trying to find, even to the point where we were involved in, we've had contract buying that we've tried to set up with local farmers, these smaller producers, or allowing CSAs to actually have their pickup here at the co-op. So CSAs that want to reach a broader customer base. So not looking at ourselves as a competitor with the local community, but looking at ourselves as a way to help provide these areas of value, to our members and expand the co-op. By, I tell folks when I describe the co-op that we're a wagon wheel. The facility is the hub. And then the co-op actually is the entire wheel. We branch out into the community and it's a much bigger picture. But the store is just the hub. So I think that it's just listening to the members and trying to get involved. We were involved politically with the state of Rhode Island when the Healthy Communities folks were trying to pass a sugary beverage tax that would tax any sugary beverage, any added sugar to it, that by $0.015, and those monies would then go to increase the value of SNAP dollars for anyone using those SNAP dollars to buy fresh produce. So it's a bit of a threaded, layered thing, and they try this every year. And this is the first year we were involved, and we didn't get it, but we brought it further than it had ever been. It took the Speaker of the House to not call it to the floor. If he had called it to the floor, it would have passed. So the lobbyists were able to influence it not getting called. So by hearing and listening to our members and our customers and using our influence as a vehicle to help them, kind of move forward the agendas that reflect the membership base, and understanding what our influence is and using that to achieve those goals. So that's what I would add.
Yeah, super powerful. anyone can follow up on that if they're ready. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go.
Get in there.
Lane, can you put up my third slide, please? I just have a quote from another co-opper that I want to share with you all that speaks to, I think, well, basically this, I typed this up from a webinar I was listening to about member engagement that the Boston Community Center for Ownership led. And Laure, who is a worker owner and I believe founder at Cerro Co-op, a composting cooperative in Boston, responded to this question about how do you get real, authentic member engagement in a multilingual cooperative. Uh-oh, how do I see my notes? Okay. Multilingual cooperative where folks have multiple levels of educational attainment, which was true for a yard and a half as well. And so I think this speaks to the footing question. So I'm just going to read the quote to you that I typed out from Laure. So sorry, it's a little small for me. One sec. Don't read it yet. Okay, so they said, it's just about patience and having the intention that what you want is for everybody to be included, everybody to be able to participate at the highest level that they want to participate and that they can participate. What is effective is that we have a workplace culture, that's what Tommy was speaking about, that employees right away know is different. It's not just because we're a co-op, it's being multilingual, trying to show respect for everybody, no matter what their job is. A driver doesn't get less respect than a manager. Those are just the values of our co-op. We develop an atmosphere that is welcoming and accepting and creates space for questions and sometimes creates space to think about things because people get things at different levels. And she said, I think you can do it. You just have to want to do it. And it just takes time. So I thought that was a great quote from Laure. Hopefully it's inspiring.
Without a doubt. Tommy?
Yeah, definitely very, very inspiring. Also, yeah, I mean, I seem like a broken record with the culture talk, but it's really very important. And also showing investment in your members. You know, it's investment is usually reciprocated with more engagement. Some of the things we do at Earth and Science Cooperative is, you know, and these are things that, you know, they're dollars and cents too. Sometimes these things cost money. Like we have an education fund, and we have, you know, just certain, you know, I hate to like tie it to money, but just like things that we know we have to provide or have to make available. And when people feel like they're taken care of, like if their curiosity is being satisfied, if they want to learn more about their job, then they can go take a class and we'll pay for it. If they want to have a suggestion for a new tool, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, these are just, you know, like their investments, expenditures, and it's like creating a sustainable culture is an investment. So that's one way that you can do it without money. But yeah, yeah, that's, I think how I would sum that up is that you have to be willing to spend energy and to create the culture, spend energy and mind power to create the culture and the place that you want for yourself, and to create opportunities for people who want to grow within that space, to make that easy for them, and that in return, you know, creates engagement.
Love it. Appreciate that. Yeah, make it easy to grow. You know, that's excellent. Exactly. We got some silent snaps in the chat. So I know I've got two questions. So I'll ask them and anyone can take them. The first comes from Angela. She asked, has anyone seen member training happening collectively, like between co-ops in a given region or sector? And, you know, if it was successful or not from what you saw. So different co-ops cooperating to do trainings. Has anyone seen that? And, you know, people in the audience can also unmute themselves and comment. We have about 5 or so minutes left for whoever wants to hang around.
That is a really good question, and I am also very interested in the answer to that. The concept of a cooperatives cooperating is one of the, as everyone is in a cooperative know that that's one of the guiding principles. And I would like, we're at a size where we're starting to like sort of tentatively step in that direction, but I am very interested in seeing that implemented and to be part of it for sure.
In
Yeah.
our world, I'm
Oops,
sorry. In our world, in the world of food co-ops, there's not so much about member training as there is training for staff and things along those lines. And NCG is a big part of that. So, and Colluminate and things along those, organizations along those lines.
Definitely. So intermediary organizations in the food sector, for example, might do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So unless there's and Samantha, yep.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, definitely like the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, NASCO, put on trainings for a lot of co-ops, and people host them from the co-ops themselves and learn from each other. And then locally in Boston, like the Greater Boston Chamber of Cooperatives, we were putting together some of those. The Boston Center for Community Ownership, Dowie, Julian's here. And like, for example, Eulalio, who's like one of the co-op leaders at A Yard and a Half. He's done a ton to help set up the Boston Cleaning Cooperative. So I think a lot of the stuff like just like happens organically and kind of under the radar too, but it's like huge in the co-op world.
Excellent, excellent. I'll dive into another question unless John was unmuted for a reason. Did you want to add anything, John Seward? No? Okay. So the next question that we have from the audience comes from Matsushi. It says, what membership strategies make sense when you're first getting a co-op going versus, the ongoing strategies of maintaining and building the community that we've been discussing? So anyone can hop in, just give your perspective if you have it.
I wasn't at Earth Science when it transitioned from a sole proprietorship into a cooperative, so I cannot offer like lived experience. But from what I have heard, how this came about, it was an exercise in trust, kind of. So some of the employee, basically she offered membership into the co-op to everyone that was currently employed at the time for Earth Science, which was not a giant pool of people. And some people did decline, but I feel like everyone who was a founding member of this cooperative was very very sort of like right for that. They were already kind of like people that we're trying to create a different work environment, have different relationships with each other than you would normally have in the business world at large. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else as we close out? Any final thoughts on those or anything else?
I would just say, like, in the beginning of starting a co-op, you really want a core group of people who are committed and willing and able to put in the time and the work to set everything up. And that often goes underappreciated later on by us people who join, but I think it's definitely a big part of it. Yeah, it takes so much work in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would echo what Samantha said. I think it's really important that you find that that core group of people to kick it off and get it going. And then you're going to need to have that that knowledge base accessible and available to the next layers of board members that kind of come on board to follow. And you know, our board president has been involved for a decade on the board, which is a long time to be on a board. But you know, he's a major driving factor, and as a retailer, there's so much that changes for us that we have to be on top of, and there's a lot of different layers to what we do. So having that thread that kind of has been there all along, and this, I think this year he's going to be transitioning out, but it's, you know, you need that structure. Don't underestimate how important that stability is.
Definitely. And, you know, we've got our last minute here, so I'll take that last word unless we have anything, and just reemphasize everything that's being said. In the beginning, there's a sense of urgency. And so you need people who are willing to work, you know, and get their hands dirty and strive towards that vision that you all share. And then I think, to speak to what Tommy is saying, you know, you need to then create a sense of culture and adapt for fit. You know, now you're hiring for fit. You know, now you kind of have to discern, or whatever the case is, as you expand and get to know people, that they can fit into the culture. And then, just to say what John just said, then you need people willing to step aside, even if they've put in 10 years of work. You know, how are you able to step aside, and then having, you know, a vision for that cycle, you know, of urgency, of fit, of retiring, you know, and being able to recycle those energies back into the group. So that's all I'll say. And I want to thank everybody for being here. I'm going to stop the recording at this point, and if folks want to hang out, if they have any extra questions, we can do that. But I just want to, you know, just show my deepest gratitude for everyone who took the time to be here today with us, and just share their own learnings. Just thank you guys. Yeah, man. Exactly.